Captain Elias Thorne caught Empress Calitha's primary wrist mid-strike, his fingers locking onto the joint with the cold precision of a hydraulic clamp. The four-armed draconite froze, her silver blades humming centimeters from his throat. A billion viewers across Ethera Central held their breath. How could a creature with such soft skin hold back a god? If you have ever doubted the strength hidden in a quiet heart, subscribe and walk with us through the archives. Let's see what happens when the galaxy stops laughing. The smell of synthetic caffeine in a stained travel mug had been the only thing keeping the arena technicians awake 6 hours earlier, long before the first gate hissed open. The bridge collective watched from the upper tiers, their optical sensors struggling to reconcile the biological data streaming from the pit. Below, the centennial apex roared with the weight of 100 species. They were a council representing the oldest bloodlines in the sector, yet even their composite processors felt the primal vibration of the Draconite warchant. Empress Calith stood at the center of the shifting sands, a mountain of liquid silver armor and lethal, four-armed intent. Then came the Terrans. They looked like a clerical oversight. Captain Elias Thorne walked with a lean, almost fragile gait that invited the mockery cascading from the million-strong crowd. He carried nothing but a weathered kinetic baton, a tool more suited for a simple technician than a champion of the apex. The rhythmic clicking of a faulty ventilation fan in the observation booth seemed louder than his footsteps on the arena floor. The senior counselor leaned forward, a secondary lung fluttering as Calith drew 4 curved blades that hummed with enough energy to shear through a cruiser's hull. Why are they here, Vrel? This is not a match. It is a ritual execution. Chief Engineer Vrel did not look away from his holographic readouts. His spindly fingers danced over the bioscans of the human, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the amber glow of Thorne's heart rate. Look at the skeletal density, he clicked, his voice a dry rasp of static. Terrans come from a death world where gravity is a constant, crushing predator. They evolved a unique mechanism, Wolf's Law. Their bone tissue densifies under mechanical stress. The more the environment tries to break them, the harder they become. They are literally built to carry the load of a planet. The atmosphere is shifting, and the hegemony's pride is starting to crack. Join us as we witness the moment the prey becomes the hunter. Beneath the reinforced glass of the deck, the air began to shimmer. The counselor watched Thorne's eyes through the zoom lens of the primary monitor. They weren't darting in the frantic scan of a cornered animal. Instead, they were tracking Calith's center of gravity with an obsessive, terrifying patience. He was calculating the anatomy of a goddess. The Empress did not wait for a salute. She launched. Her 4 arms became a whirlwind of silver light, each strike aimed at a vital point. Thorne did not block. He flowed. He moved with a strange, energy-saving grace that made Calith's explosive speed look wasteful. It was a display of pure persistence hunting, the ancient art of being exactly where the predator is not. Which meant the sensors were a sharp, metallic ping. The air in the arena cracked as Calith's primary blade shattered a crystal pillar exactly where Thorne had been standing a millisecond before. Shards of obsidian glass exploded outward. The crowd's laughter was dying now, replaced by a cold, creeping silence. This was not a sacrifice. It was an adaptation the collective had never witnessed. The sensor arrays in the Bridge Collective's booth began to spike with erratic data. We were seeing the chemical breakdown of a goddess in real time. Calith's primary respiratory vents were flared wide, struggling to pull enough oxygen into her massive chest to fuel a metabolism that was effectively drowning in its own exhaust. Her 4 blades, once a blur of lethal silver, were now heavy burdens that dragged in the sand as she tried to reset her stance. Thorne didn't look like he was in a tournament. He looked like he was taking a walk. A loose thread on his left sleeve fluttered with every deliberate step, a tiny, mundane imperfection that mocked the pristine silver of Calith's armor. "It is the lactic acid," Vrel remarked, his voice a series of clicking realizations that echoed in the small cabin. Humans possess a unique cardiovascular efficiency that allows them to process metabolic waste while under extreme physical load, whereas draconites are purely anaerobic sprinters who lose all mechanical advantage once the initial surge fails. Caliph was drowning. Thorn circled her. He wasn't even breathing hard. "You should have studied your opponent, Caliph," he said. His storm-gray eyes locked onto her trembling knees. "Everything on my planet was faster than us. Everything had bigger teeth. So we learned to wait for the moment you couldn't breathe anymore." The Empress lunged one final time, her movements sluggish and desperate. If he died now, the Alliance. The thought was cut short by the sound of bone meeting bone. Captain Elias Thorn caught Empress Caliph's primary wrist mid-strike, his fingers locking onto the joint with the cold precision of a hydraulic clamp. He didn't wait for her to recover. Thorn applied a sharp, sudden pressure to the brachial nerve cluster tucked beneath her secondary shoulder joint. Caliph's upper limbs went completely slack. He then moved with a velocity that defied his fragile appearance, catching her second wrist and pivoting his weight into a surgical joint lock. She collapsed. The invincible Empress of the hegemony was pinned to the floor by a creature half her size. Her forearms splayed out like the broken wings of a fallen bird, while the silence of the eons grew so heavy it felt as though the very atmosphere of Etheris Central had solidified into a single, crushing block of disbelief. The match was over. Thorn let go and stepped back, leaving her in the dust of her own arena. He didn't gloat. He simply waited for her to remember how to breathe. Thorn retracted the kinetic baton and slid it into the worn leather loop at his hip. He stood over the Empress and offered a hand, palm up and fingers relaxed. The baton sat still, a simple tool of a simple man who had just rewritten the history of the hegemony. High above, the violet sun set behind the frozen flames of the crystal towers. Does true strength lie in the ability to destroy or the wisdom to show mercy? We will be watching the stars for your answer until the next cycle begins.